Dunn's a real hard place to get out of poverty in.
Yes, it is. Real good place to go if you're in poverty, though.
Okay, how about now?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yay, yay, thank you. Okay. All right, without further ado, okay, so let us move on. So look for causes, not necessarily characteristics. I'm one of those people, however, that when you're filling out the SWOT analysis, try not to filter the information that the case gives you, all right? Put down the information that it's based on, okay? So sometimes remember also is that the causes are lacked to an inability or a lack of resources that you have in order to solve problems. Some things can't be overcome, but you might be able to shift resources around so that where issues with lack of resources cannot be overcome, that they can at least be minimized. And the way that I can say that is some way of putting in a relational norm, some kind of system within the organization for individuals who cannot achieve a certain goal with your product, that they can have some kind of feedback. Sometimes feedback is just enough, right? So look for the causes, not necessarily the characteristics. But once again, like I said, when you're looking through a case and you're putting together your situation analysis, try to take that diagnosis and put into the synthesis and use that as a way of coming up ultimately with the issues at hand. This is a big one. Separate the internal issues from the external issues, because this may be one of the biggest issues that you have. Miscategorization, spit it out, Dave, is the #1 cause of poor SWOTs. You have to ask yourself, would this issue exist if the firm did not? If this is an issue that is outside the purview of the organization, if I can't functionally change this, then this is either an opportunity or a threat. And this is one of those things, unfortunately, that takes time and experience to be able to overcome. And here's the last thing. And so I've talked about disruption, and I've talked about disruption being a good thing. But how do you say the word disruption, and what does it mean? How do you translate that into actions? And that's kind of what you need to be able to do. And so this is what I mean when I talk about disruption. Okay, so let's see, let's see if I can zoom this out. Excuse me. I might have to just expand this and download it. Okay. Okay, and let me zoom this in, okay? The first thing you need to do is when you're translating what these things mean, you have to look at both sides and determine when you say something, what does it mean in terms of a strength or a weakness? So if I were going to look at one of those old-fashioned cliches that we all work with, we're an established firm. If I were to translate that into a strength, it means that you have experience, that you're trustworthy, that you have a track record. But if you look at it as a weakness, it means that inflexibility may be one of the issues that you have. To say that you are a large supplier means that you might have a comprehensive product line. You may have longevity and a strong reputation, but it also might mean that you're inflexible or that you have a large kind of bureaucracy in the system. Think of the 600-pound gorilla versus the 80-pound cheetah, all right? You may not have the ability to be able to move, to focus on changes as they should happen. You have a comprehensive product line. This is kind of one of those interesting things because this is actually something that Amazon has tackled, that they took from a weakness to a strength, okay? And so Amazon, it was part of a thought experiment for decades, was that you were going to be 100,000 yards wide and 1 inch deep. To be able to translate that into the endless aisle, which means that you can shop down the product line and never achieve to the end of it. That's kind of where Amazon was. And so you do have that as a one-stop shopper, and it is convenient. But what they were able to do is hit the potential weaknesses where you cannot find hard to find products and limited in-depth expertise. And they've been able to take those weaknesses and with their strengths and their resources, be able to flip the model. And so industry standard means that you have a wide adoption of your particular item, you have a high status and image, and here's where Microsoft failed, all right? They had all of these as advantages, but they were vulnerable to technological changes. They had a limited view of who their competition was. They couldn't conceive that Apple could fight on the same ground they could, or even that Google, which was an upstart company at that time, would possibly have the resources to be able to overthrow them. And yet they did, okay? And they changed that by not changing the operating system, but changing the platform in which consumers use, and fundamentally, they lost, okay? So there's 3 types of thinkings that you need when you want to have a disruptive mindset. So the right side of thinking is that you look at the world as it is now. And so if we're using Ford, and if this is also the snapshot of time in Ford when OC was writing this book in 2018, 2019. So you're looking at an entirely different mindset, okay? But no doubt about it, the Ford F-150 series of trucks is still the #1 seller of trucks. And it has been that way for an incomparable 50 years. And they're about to give that away to either the Tundra or a Chevy truck, okay? Upside down thinking is how do we transform our strengths into weaknesses and our weaknesses into strengths? In other words, we flip the models. Think about what is missing in Ford if this is all we have to focus on. In other words, deliberately shove strengths into weaknesses, shove your weaknesses into strengths, and in your own mind, translate, how can I make that happen? And then think about what threats could make your strengths a weakness. And think about what opportunities could make your weakness, make your weaknesses a strength. This is upside down thinking. Takes a little training. I mean, you have to do it over and over again. But once you've done it, What you have to do is basically break down your own barriers, especially within your organizations. And that's critical. And that leads you to the last part, which is outside in thinking. Okay. So look at your competitors or look at from the outside. Look at your competitors' strengths and weaknesses. And maybe with a competitive advantage, I can flip my strengths and weaknesses. Now, this is the strategy that Toyota came up with. And missing the name, the grandson of the original Toyota. Anyway, they decided in a very bold way in 2022 that they were going to continue the commitment with the internal combustion engine and continue by confirming their line with hybrids instead of electric vehicles. Very brave thing to do, especially with the predominance of government support moving towards electric vehicles. They confirmed this in 2021, 2022, and now we are in 2024, and they're still moving along, and Toyota is selling 16.5 million cars a year. And that is a phenomenal number. Right. They've been able to maintain consistency. One of the things also that Toyota has done is they have bought a piece of Subaru and they've bought a piece of Mazda as well. So one of the strategic advantages that Toyota has is they make the #1 transmission in the world. They have they had the 7-speed transmission in 2017. They created the 8 and the 9-speed transmission with 3 overdrives in it in 2021. If you're looking at used Toyotas, watch out for the years 2018 to 2020, because that's when they were trying to figure it out. But what they've done is by creating this strategic cooperation with Subaru, is now the Toyota engine is inside the Subarus. Excuse me, the Toyota transmissions are now inside of Subarus, and the 2024 model Mazdas have the transmissions as well. Now, Toyota is going to make a mistake. Okay. Toyota is about to make a mistake because in order to keep up with the CAFE standards, which are the mile per gallons, they are going to put the 4-cylinder Subaru, which the 4-cylinder Subaru turbocharged engine in their Highlanders in 2025. And I think that's a big mistake. Okay. The 6-cylinder engine is still the linchpin, especially for large automobiles. The 4-cylinder engine that's one of the reasons, by the way, Subaru, its strategic advantage with their engines is that why were they always used for outdoor? All right. The question is that Subarus have a low center of gravities because this was a strategic decision. So if you ever look at a BMW motorcycle, the cylinders go like this, left and right. Okay. Traditional motors, like the Harleys, are in a V formation that are around the chassis. On the BMWs, they stick out on the side. The Subaru engines that are inside the automobiles, their 4 cylinders, stick out at 90-degree angles. All right. What that does is it lowers the center of gravity of the automobile, makes it much more sturdy on shaky ground, and a combination of the all-wheel drive and this is what has made Subaru so successful. Now, what they've also done is they stuck a turbocharger on top of the engine as well, and the turbocharger has increased the horsepower by 150%. Hey, that's great. But it's a 4-cylinder engine, all right? You know, a turbocharger, just to give you an idea, A turbocharger works by forcing air into the cylinders, and that increases the efficiency of the explosions inside, but it's a four-cylinder engine, all right? You're talking about an engine that's 50% smaller than a V6. And what you've also done is put a very complicated turbocharger on top, which is one more thing to break. And one of the things that Toyota has done is their six-cylinder engines, their V6s are bulletproof, all right? You change the oil on a Toyota V6 and it'll last 600,000 miles easy. I got a Highlander. I really seriously plan on putting 1,000,000 miles on it, all right? That is my goal. And I think this is going to be one of those issues that I think Toyota has made a mistake in. And this is unfortunately one of those things where they've taken their strengths and weaknesses and decided that they were going to translate it. And I think it's going to, yeah, anyway, I'm sorry. I just wanted to let you know, sometimes we can outthink ourselves. Okay, so right side thinking is the current state of business. Upside down thinking is we transform our strengths into weaknesses and weaknesses into strengths. And outside in thinking is how it applies, looking at a firm's competition to see how can we take advantages there? How can we create strategic advantages? So Uber and Lyft are the greatest examples that you can come up with a disruptive technology where just one single piece of technology fundamentally changed the world forever. So one of the things about taxi services, especially in the United States, is that it is a company network that revolves around a certain number of drivers in a given area that uses a private radio system in order to be able to work. Now, you want to hear something? In order to be a taxi driver in New York, you have to know, to be a certified, you have to know every single street in New York. It costs $100,000 to get certification as a taxi driver in New York. Now just think about that, okay? However, with this one little thing with a GPS setup, I can become the equivalent of a taxi driver. And this is a perfect example of disruption, okay? The other thing that it did is it connected the riders with the drivers. And that was even more vitally important because one of the things that is true is that consumers hate uncertainty. And if I just know, well, my ride's 11 minutes away, it's easier for us to accept. And that was one of the weaknesses in the taxi environment is the uncertainty of knowing wherever a cab is at any moment. And so let's talk about how we plan. And so going back to our SWOT analysis and looking it over, remember that strengths and opportunities should be helpful to achieving our objective. Strengths are internal to the organization. Weaknesses are internal. Harmful are those things that reduce our probability of achieving the objective. Remember generally that internal organization or internal organs are microeconomic. And external or macroeconomic. In other words, large. Usually, these are problems that reach not to individual organizations, but to industries. It is important to understand that strengths are only important if they satisfy a customer need. Strengths and weaknesses are only important if they impact a customer need. You can have a convoluted organizational structure, but if you're satisfying the customers and making them happy, then that should be relegated to a minimal issue. If you are continually late on deliveries, and that impacts your customers' loyalty and satisfaction, then that's a problem. So if we're looking at potential strengths, abundant financial resources, a respected company and brand image, agile and being able to address disruption. In other words, being able to embrace the disruption that you have to create. If you're advocates for your brand, in other words, that's also an internal thing as well. If your employees are advocates for your own brand, and those are advantages. There are also those individuals such as influencers or marketing mavens who are spokespeople for your particular organization, and they create advantages as well. And that you have enormous economies of scale. Those are some of the potential things to consider. If I don't have a strategic direction, that's major, okay? If I do not have a clear plan for where my future is going, then anywhere you go will get there. Limited financial resources, a lack of focus, a conventional mindset, all of those are things that create disadvantages. If I'm in a rapidly growing market, this is a great opportunity, but it is also an inherently dangerous one as well. I hope we're always in growth cycles, but remember, marketing myopia says one of the great myths is the ever-expanding population and that growth is always assured. If you have firms that are not willing to move into potential locations that would be valuable, you definitely want to do that. Understanding how consumer tastes and needs change as well. And we'll talk about all of these. Threats, entry by foreign competitors. Aldi has come in and found that sweet spot area that Dollar General has taken and generally has been, and they're making inroads into the United States. New substitute products, and ones, once again, in mature markets where we consider things to be commodities. Changing customer needs and rival firms that adopt new strategies. We must be mobile, agile, and hostile, right? So, remember that strengths are capabilities when they support customer needs, and it is always important to stay customer focused. That builds that strategic competitive advantage that cannot be replaced. I am not a Starbucks customer, but for those who enjoy Starbucks, it is invaluable. Apple, same thing. It resides in a unique place relative to the competition that cannot be moved. Always remember your relationships with customers, because that's how you determine whether or not you have a strength or a weakness. Let's talk about airlines. So, if we look at the big three in the United States, American, United, and Delta, they have strengths and advantages. Their big problems tend to be labor relations, internal inefficiencies, and they're very slow to respond to customer changes. However, They have the strength in the economies of scale in that they have alliances that allow them to fly everywhere just by booking with one particular firm, and that is their strength. Low-cost carriers entered the market because there were routes that Delta, American, and United abandoned. Before the 70s deregulation in airlines and moved into the 1980s, carriers across the United States were required to fly into given areas, even if those areas were a profit or a loss. In the 80s deregulation of airlines, larger organizations such as Delta, American, and United moved away. But what that also did was it created a gap in services which lower cost airlines, Southwest being the major one, but you also had companies that you haven't heard of, Braniff, Midway, Eastern Airline. Those are all airlines that were in the 80s that went into this low cost of carrier environment. And even now, there are still those airlines that exist in that area that are able to, by using internal efficiencies, can make profit in those areas. It's that 80s deregulation that started Southwest in the Tri-City area, where they flew from Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio, and ultimately they took that model and spread it out. Deregulation also in the 80s brought around ESPN. So ESPN started out in Hartford, Connecticut. And in order to do like a broadcast, you have to be able to be on a satellite. And so someone who was working in Hartford at the time, looking up the numbers, said it would only cost us 5% more to create a nationwide network. Because they're already on the satellites, all they have to do is just open up that area. And so what ESPN did is the rising acceptance of cables in the 80s, they found that perfect niche. And they were able to take just 5% more money, spend that money, and now ESPN is where it is now. ESPN was not financially stable until 2006. They spent 25 years in the red before they finally made it in the black. But once again, this is our ability to take our strengths and our weaknesses and be able to translate them, especially our weaknesses, into strengths. And so remember that our opportunities and threats are uncontrollable, but every threat can be turned into an opportunity, and every opportunity could possibly be a threat. What ESPN did, what the airlines did, and the phone companies, especially in the 1986, the Telecom Act of 1986 did when they released the bells, is organizations came in to take advantage of these particular changes in the technological and the political areas of the time. Usually deregulation as a concept means is that there are opportunities for growth if you can find the right place to be. I have a friend of mine who became independently wealthy because he started a telecom organization in 1988 when the 1986 Act came along. Didn't return my phone calls, but he's a nice, great guy. But anyway, it is that. Going back to what I said, before 1986, the Bell corporations were one single entity, and all of the phone systems in the United States were owned by one organization, AT&T. Okay, they were what was called a regulated monopoly. They gave them because that was basically considered the only way to expand communication across the United States. Because let's also consider that from the 40s to the 60s, communication was considered a strategic national asset that was vital to our national security. By the 80s, we felt like we might be able to go beyond that. They broke up the bells. We started all this new competition. That's where we're at today. So, Blockbuster, anybody, no, I don't think anybody, has anybody ever know, or do you even know what a Blockbuster is? Okay, yeah. So I can remember in the 80s and 90s going to a store to rent a videotape, okay? Blockbusters were single location stores where you could rent a VCR tape and then actually a DVD as well, and as things moved on. So they have them up on a wall, and if you went by the Netflix at 4:30, if you got there too late, then you wouldn't have what you wanted to rent for the weekend. And I swear to you, at a Blockbuster store, the line would be out onto the curb of people trying to come in and rent their DVD for the weekend. Blockbusters were very intelligent in the way that they did this, because not only could you rent DVDs, they became places where you could buy DVDs, you could buy popcorn, you could buy snacks, you could get everything at a Blockbuster. So around 2004, around 2001, 2002, Netflix comes along. And Netflix says, you don't have to do it that way. What you can do is if you just part of a subscription service, we'll mail it to you. You can keep it as long as you want, but if you want the next one, you got to mail it back to us. So you got to mail it back in the return envelope and get it in, and you go, okay, and we get the next one. And that's how it worked. It worked as a mail subscription service. In 2004, Netflix made a major move, and then they started streaming before or less than 5% of the United States had high-speed access. 2004, you started to have cable modems, you started to have DSL, you started to have, a couple of other technologies. Anyway, you started to see that, but it was just in its infancy. It was not even there. All right. Now, what happens is that there was something else even bigger coming along that neither of them knew what was happening. And that was, it came into the 2005, what is it? Consumer Electronics Show. And it was these vending machines that you could put anywhere, and you could get a DVD from a vending machine. Yes, Redbox. And that fundamentally replaced fundamentally forever replaced the store, because it ultimately made it much different. Because once again, they weren't listening to consumer trends, because consumers didn't want to wait, all right? And for those who didn't want to wait to the absolute extreme, not even wanting to wait for a DVD, that's where streaming came in. Streaming absolutely, positively helped the growth of high-speed access. There is no question about that. And then when Apple came out in 2007 with iTunes, then the whole shoe dropped and streaming became predominant in the United States. We still have dial-up internet, we still do, but the whole home entertainment system is one of the really great stories to tell you how technology changed fundamentally everything, but it was all an answer to consumer desires, okay? So Redbox survived. Now they've gone even in even more unique ways. Netflix supplies, they even still do subscription service, but they're predominantly streaming. And what they ultimately found was that if I can stream things, then I can create my own content and save some money at the same time. And so now what has happened is Netflix has become their own production company. And you find Max and all the others and the rest. Now, here we are 2024, and streaming in general, there's only one streaming system that's making money, folks. One. You know which one it is? Netflix. Netflix has first mover advantage. They put a platform in. They were able to take advantage, especially of being able to recoup their investments early. They have been agile, mobile, and hostile, and they have been able to do it. Disney Plus, crash, all right? The rest, crash. Let me think. Max is interesting in that they've been able to collaborate with multi-movie houses, and they're able to do it or be somewhat more successful. But in individual stream services, there's really only one making money, and it's Netflix. Okay.
Does that include streaming services that like do TV and stuff? Like,
Oh, so you're talking about like, oh gosh, I've got one, a Roku.
yeah, they're like Hulu and.
Yeah, now they make money off of subscription services and they run their primary money off of devices. And they make primary money off of advertising. So that's how they get it, all right? But here's the difference or the difficulty with devices. Guess who's taken over the model for devices? So like a Roku device to get all of those things. You know where you can find those very same things now?
Well, some TVs have them already built in.
Exactly, okay? So the televisions now have all the technology that the devices do. So like the last Samsung I bought has all of that stuff inside of it, okay? So yeah. Once again, technology has a way of moving things along. We can't keep up, all right? And so, they Roku still makes money, no doubt about it. But a lot of their money comes from advertising their services from streaming units. I actually have we have a streaming channel with a Friday night show. It's not hard to create, okay? So anybody can get it on Roku. I mean, it's if you're willing to do the investment. And any group can be, anybody a Roku beside me? Okay, yeah, you can actually go in and search through all the Roku channels that are out there, and I think those are pretty cool.
Yeah, there are quite a few of them, more than you would think.
Yeah, many more than you might think.
Yeah.
Okay, and a lot of those, I know a guy we started a channel. I know other guys that have started channels, and they make their money primarily subscription advertising. You know, so they find public domain movies, you know, ones that are out there that don't require a franchise fee. And they put a bunch of movies up on a nostalgia channel and they make money off of that. You know, lots of ways, lots of ways to make money. So let me take a pause right there. We'll take a 5-minute break and we'll come back and we'll work through the rest of this.
What we doing today? He's,
Oh, really?
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Go that way.
Switch.
Yeah. Before we go on, I thought I'd just show you this. Oops, let me share this with fans out there. So this is Microsoft Surface Duo. And this is a foldable tablet that they have out, okay? Remind you of anything? This is their, oops, I made a mistake moment, where they're hoping you don't remember what the courier was. It runs Windows. So this was the compromise they made. And it's too little too late, okay? Because the only thing really that's different about it versus any of the others is that it folds. Okay, the courier had much greater unique abilities. The production team and the real young Turks out there in Microsoft who thought this stuff up were jettisoned years ago. And basically said, no, thanks, we don't want to get in the way of Windows. And this is kind of their admission of saying, well, maybe we got it wrong. Maybe, all right. And there's nothing in that, you know, other than I'm kind of a tech weenie, so I would like it to, you know, for funs and giggles, okay? But I'm not gonna spend, you know, that much money just because it folds. Because that's all that it does.
More than an iPad.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, exactly that. I mean, why? Why would I invest that money when I could have an iPad with far more capabilities, okay? Because we're only talking about 128 gigs, okay? So, yeah. And this is, and if you notice, this is a refurb, okay? So this is an original. Nah. Thanks for no thanks. Okay. Oh. Kind of one of the things I do, especially in marketing strategy, is for me, I like to tell you about things that work and why they don't, because I think that's an important part of the knowledge I want you to gain, okay? I want you to understand the experiences of those things that work and those things that don't, because ultimately it will help you make better decisions later on. Besides, I like saying, I was right. We don't didn't make me any money, but if I'm so smart, why ain't I rich? That's an old saying. Okay. So how do we do it? I mean, I've talked about this, you know, back and forth. And this is a very good visual model. If you're visually, if you have visual acuity, which I'm very visually oriented, I see pictures better than I see words, then this is an excellent way to put it all together, all right? So you synthesize, okay? You diagnose and synthesis, you synthesize a wide variety of information and you aid this into the transition. You have to address every strength and weakness. This is the purview of the marketing managers, folks. If you are a marketing manager, this is your big job, right? When you're coming up with a marketing plan. And you have to be aware of all of the issues that are involved. So what you hope to do is you hope to avoid the threats and minimize them if you can, okay? If you can't do anything to it. If I can convert my weaknesses by doing the reverse approach or the top approach into strengths, then that's good. This upside down thinking, all right? If I can take my threats and convert them to opportunities, that's outside in thinking. And if I can match my strengths to my weaknesses. And so if I have some internal resources that can minimize the issues, then that's hopefully what I can do to achieve success. And as I've said before, this all comes into practice. Next week, we'll do another SWOT analysis. We'll use an actual case that's in the Harvard Business Review. And we'll get together in our groups. We'll just do the SWOT analysis, but we'll take and think about that in terms of a marketing plan. Now, what are the 6 things that a marketing manager must be aware of? They must be able to look beyond the resources and the product and offer solutions. But the outcome of a SWOT analysis is to come up with answers. The success tends on our ability of making capabilities. Capabilities, remember, capabilities are strengths that impact, that affect needs, or let's just say that connect or correlate with a customer's needs. Those are capabilities. And if we can match the strengths with the opportunities, then we create advantages. If I can convert weaknesses into strengths, if I can invest, okay, then I convert my weaknesses into strengths. Southwest Airlines, I only fly the 737. I can't fly overseas. But look at that as an advantage as well. All right, I'm going to create a unique frame. I'm going to take that weakness and turn it into a strength. And I'm going to give my customers a break on their prices by doing things not just different, but different that creates advantages. Know that weaknesses that can't be converted are limitations. And if I can minimize the limitations that I can live with, and I can reckon with that, then that's fine. Remember to flip our strengths and our weaknesses to determine their potential disruption. How do I convert them? And opportunities and threats should be assessed outside in as competitors. How can I take my competitors' strengths and turn them into weaknesses? It's all in the practice, okay? It's all in the practice. Now, those are the quantitative steps, okay? Remember this, that when you're creating a SWOT analysis, there is no bad thing you put there. Do not filter what you're doing. Any good advertising agency, when they're coming up with slogans and whatever, there's no such thing as a bad idea. Does anybody know what the name or American Family Life and Casualty? Does anybody know what that corporation is? American Family Life and Casualty. Aflac. Okay, yeah. American Family Life and Casualty in the 80s and 90s were looking for a way to spread beyond just the Atlanta area, all right? And they were trying to find a way to nationalize their particular organization. And so one of the things is they recruited an independent organization to come in and build their marketing strategy. And they wanted to come up with a way for people to recognize them. Brand recognition is critical, okay? And one of the things that the CEO of American Family Life and Casualty said is, there's no such thing as a bad idea. So the ad firm got together, worked for about 3 weeks. They were coming up with ideas. They went out to go eat at a Subway. True story. They're sitting there talking and they go, what was the name of the company again? It's so long, American Family, Aflac, okay? And seriously, one guy said, it sounds like a duck, and then the other person said, the team leader, yeah, it does sound like a duck, doesn't it? And so they said, well, let's come up with a logo, maybe a duck, How do I remember the name? And they came up with Aflac. And now Aflac, within 3 years, had a 97% brand recognition. Now, you don't know it as American Family Life and Casualty, but that is a classic example of saying that there's no such thing as a bad idea at the start, okay? Now you start, after the second step is getting into the qualitative analysis. Quantitative. You start categorizing things in terms of their magnitude of effect. So, yes, you categorize opportunities and threats as minor and major, even though a threat is something that can potentially put you out of business forever. But what you do is you categorize the ones and tell them whether or not they're big or they're small. So you quantify the magnitude, you rate them in their importance, and then you multiply the magnitude times the importance. It sounds funky, okay? And realize, once again, this is what makes being a marketing manager an art and a skill, not just merely business decisions. AI might come up with good ideas, but then again, not always, because let's never forget the human element, the Aflac, okay? The ability to think beyond that. And so when you rate these things, you rate them as you best consider. And as you gain more experience, you'll get better at it. By the way, anybody know what the hour rate is to become an expert at anything? Science tells us that it takes 10,000 hours to be able to become an expert at anything, right? So if you look at the time that you're in school for 4 years, if you look at the time that it comes for a 4-year education, it amazingly comes out to about 10,000 hours, if you're willing to calculate it out. So that's why you indulge in it, because you want to hit that Mendoza line of becoming an expert, okay? So this is an example in pharma. So let's just say it's something to treat arthritis. Patent is exclusivity for 3 years. New product entry. You put all your strengths together. By the way, does anybody know how long it takes or how much money it takes to come out with a new drug? 10 years and $700 million is the average. Okay. If you do it right. Okay. If you do it wrong, you're in trouble. And so this is an example of how they categorize the strengths. And of course, the ability to treat arthritis, believe me, when you get in your 50s, other than rolling left-handed cigarettes, good medication for arthritis is pretty good, okay? Just remember that the elements that have the highest total should be given the greatest influence. And strengths with high numbers must be emphasized. In other words, if it satisfies that consumer need, my strength, to create it as a capability and then move it as a competitive advantage, that is to my advantage. And yes, magnitude and importance vary by market to market. And so if you're looking at future trends, oh gosh, what's it called? The D&B report, the Dun and Bradstreet report, especially on new housing development, is a vital thing if you're into contract. By the way, folks, if you don't want to be in school, be a contractor, okay? You have no idea how hard it is to find good people to work on houses. I spend a lot of money, like in the 5 digits to even put in a bathroom. So anyway, there's money to be had out there. It doesn't affect high-tech semiconductors, certainly not. As a matter of fact, if I'm looking at D&B, what is the number one element? If I'm into semiconductors, what are some of the important raw materials that I need to look at in the margins in the market to know, how much it's going to cost? What are some of the materials in the semiconductor market? Gold is what? Gold is the best number one conductor of electricity in the world, okay? Silicon is another, that's an invaluable one. The lesser metals, not so much important, but those are the most important. By the way, in case you're wondering why batteries go on fire, okay, it is because that all of the batteries that we have now are wet, okay? So the requirement for successful batteries for electric vehicles needs to have a 99.999% purity. I'm trying to remember, I can't remember the element. What's the element that electric batteries are made out of? Pardon me? Yeah, I'm going blind.
Lithium?
Lithium. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. So lithium is a problem, but the problem with batteries is that in a liquid state, everything is in a fluctuation, all right? And lithium burns at 3,000 degrees, right? So one of the things Toyota has been working on is solid state lithium. And if they make a break in that, we're going to fundamentally see the whole EV market change, right? Look at solid state lithium and look at that technology. If I'm predicting future trends, if that bandwagon finally hits, I'm on it and I'll be retired somewhere. Okay. So the magnitude and importance and a small opportunity maybe shouldn't be emphasized, but the potential is something that should be measured. Okay, so we talked about how to do the SWOT. We talked about how to take and synthesize those strengths into capabilities. Now, how do we take the capabilities and turn them or leverage them into competitive advantages? Those unique things that we can do as a corporation better than anyone else. So we need to align the strengths and the opportunities to develop this mindset, this disruptive mindset. We're going to change things. We're going to scare a lot of people. What we hope to do is find some compatibility between the strengths that are important and sizable opportunities so that we can do this Vulcan mind meld where they come together and create this competitive advantage. If I can serve the customer needs better than my competition by thinking in the outside in way and looking at what they do, now I can do something better than them. I want to do something better. You'll find multiple strategies that can be done within that. And it's just deciding where my competitive advantages are. I might be able to be better at customer relations than any other organization. It is amazing if the hotel industry is a fascinating industry because there's no industry more that needs relational advantages than they do. So we're diamond members with Hilton. There are no no credit to me. My wife is the genius. All right. She knows how to leverage those points, no doubt about it. Okay. And I'm in awe of my wife, believe me. But one of the things that Hilton is built around is the ability to interpret the touch points and turn them into advantages and superior relationships. Because hotels live and die on just one night with an individual. What you can do legally in the particular size of the organizations you have, even the filings of the organizations that you have as well. So, rule of thumb, folks, if you're starting your own organizations, file as what's known as an LLC, Limited Liability Corporation, right? If you want to start organizations without going through it, just become what's called a DBA, doing business as, and you can file as a sole proprietorship. You can create your own business within your own self. You do not have to incorporate, because that causes other ideas or issues as well. What is the advantages of your organization? Are you streamlined? Or were you like Ford? All right. How do you find those advantages there? And once again, what's the soul of your corporation? You know, do you have the people in your organization willing and ready to go to fight it out there? So these are all advantages, okay? These are real differences between firms. However, how we perceive those organizations have an impact, and organizations cultivate that. And organizations deliberately have weaknesses because they associate them with certain strengths. Apple is about to introduce AI into their iOS. And I think it's pretty stupid. Okay. Because if there's anything I think Apple users want, it is privacy. I think that's why Apple people, one of the major reasons. One of the major reasons iPads and MacBook Pros are there, because they're bulletproof when it comes to having them hacked, all right? AI, to me, is going to introduce a fox in the henhouse, for lack of a better word, all right? And I'm not sure that's going to work. But Apple and Samsung, Apple gets its strength from coming up with major product developments. Samsung comes to their strength by continuous innovation. Two different corporations with different mindsets. LG, to me, was one of those corporations that's equal to Samsung. And I think LG is a pretty good one, but LG has gotten out of the mobile phone market. LG in 2005, they introduced and they developed flat screen high definition television. So they were one of the first players on the market. The big thing that LG had to do is how do they go about distributing that to the world and to the United States, because the United States is still the #1 market with $26 trillion economy. I think, China's 15 billion, okay? But anyway, how do you introduce it in the United States? And they thought about it, their dealer networks and those kind of things. And they finally made a choice in exclusivity for channels of distribution to one company in the United States. Anybody want to guess which one it was? Owned exclusivity for LG for 3 years. Walmart. Exactly. And for 3 years, while they held the exclusive contract, LG Electronics was the #1 electronics maker in the world. Okay. And so that is a discussion about how LG came to be where they are. Google is the opposite in Apple, especially when it comes to the concerns of privacy. Folks, the reason that the Google, oh God, well, I don't want to talk too much about Google because that's one of the cases. But Google, it has its limitation. Anyway, Amazon, by the very same notion, is different and unique from Walmart, but Walmart has a unique advantage and strength that the others don't. So Apple needs to exercise upside down thinking to make sure that its leadership does not become a weakness with a new disruptor. And I can see AI come and plow on a furrow right across concerns of privacy for consumers. And so what are strategies for developing competitive advantages in your organizations? How do you go about building organizations and strategies that support competitive advantages? There are three, and we'll talk about them one at a time. The first is operational excellence. How efficient and how well do we run the organizations internally? How strong of a corporate culture do we have? These efficiencies, are we so good that it allows us to lower costs of doing business than the competition? Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes the excellence leads to products that are so overwhelmingly good that there simply is no competition whatsoever. The first one that comes to mind when I think of that is IBM. I'll tell you a story about IBM on Thursday, about how the IBM PC penetrated the market and forever changed things. But IBM is one of those classic examples. IBM's organization is known as Big Blue, really took off in the 50s and 60s when Tom Watson came up with the System 36, the mini computer that allowed mid-range machines to be brought into mid-range offices and fundamentally changed the way business was done in the 60s. In the 80s, IBM came up with the microcomputer, the PC, and that all happened because of a gentleman by the name of Philip Don Estridge in the Entry Systems Division in Boca Raton, coming up with a brilliant idea to not only expand the IBM PC, but to expand PCs worldwide. In 2001, IBM decided, 2001, they got out of the PC business. 2007 got out of the laptop business and turned into totally a software store. They bought all the equipment from their consumers and now run strictly a software house and have fundamentally changed forever. For excellence in terms of lower cost, my thought is Texas Instruments. Texas Instruments, when they come out with calculators or any new devices, immediately their prices are set for penetration, okay, before anything else. Their desire is to capture market area to the detriment of profits. And they do that by this pursuit of operational excellence, this efficiency within their organizations. Efficiencies have dangers when they compromise safety and quality. But good organizations include safety and quality in their excellence. Okay? They shine. They have referent power. We want to be known as corporations that use their goods. There was a slogan in the 80s that was used as a brand mantra, which said, nobody ever got fired by choosing IBM. And it worked. The next is product leadership. This usually is when you excel in technology and product development. And while Microsoft dominates personal computing operating system, and I would say no, and I would say yes, ding. Microsoft Office, no doubt about it, has like 95% of all of the Office systems. I hate Google Office, all right? I despise it with the fury of 10,000 suns, but we use it and I've got to use it. And why do I feel that way? Because it's limited in its capabilities, all right? I mean, it's great for sharing information across, but, you know, maybe I'm a little bit virulent, I don't know, but it just doesn't have it, okay? So they came out with a Surface Pro, which is a great idea, which is 7 years too late, but it does do a lot of the things that you ultimately hope that they do, all right? Product leadership, having the number one products. Let me also say an organization that I think quite a bit about is Honda. Okay, Honda is one of those rare organizations that focuses on the products they sell, and it almost kind of works against the idea that you need to concentrate on your customers, because I consider that Honda focuses on their products to the point of obsession, which I think is good. They're one of the few corporations that kind of work against the whole marketing myopia, but they do it in such a way where their product leadership is so superior that they are equal or better than Toyota, and that goes a long way with me, okay? I would still buy a Toyota, but hey, I'm not turning the Honda down. And the last is customer intimacy. Knowing the consumer's needs better than everyone else. I focus on what my consumers want. And the difficulty with that being that if I focus too closely or I get too intimate with the customer, they basically ask me to back off. One of the rare fashion lines that seems to survive and survive quite well is Nordstrom. They look at fashion and lifestyle instead of categories. Know who their particular customers are and are flexible enough to be able to adjust with them. I'll give you two others, especially in fashion, which is one of the most difficult categories to exceed in all. Of course, I would know this because everything my daughters wear comes from H&M because it's a Swedish firm. My wife is Swedish. H&M does an excellent job of understanding what the consumers wish and how to get it at a reasonable price and last for a long time. Those things are enormously advantageous. They understand their customers very well. I'll give you another one, even more interesting. Hot Topic. Okay. Hot Topic is a really interesting organization because they've been able to succeed on something that seems almost to boggle the imagination. They've been able to succeed on riding a fad, which has an extremely short shelf life, from beginning to end, where fashion generally needs 4 to 6 months to plan. Fashion, by the way, the way fashion, guys, you won't know this, but fashion generally is 6 weeks ahead of the curve of everything, okay? So the goods that you'll see in stores now are those things that are wish to be worn 6 weeks ahead. And so pretty soon you're going to see back to school stuff in July. You'll start to see fall clothing in September. You'll start to see Christmas goods coming to September, and that is stretching out and out. What Hot Topic says is baloney, All right, we don't care about those prevailing trends. We're gonna look at what's hot at the moment. And we're gonna create goods instead of waiting 4 to 6 months in advance, we're gonna do it in 2 weeks, okay? And so they hit the hot point of it, they exceed expectations. They throw the things in the bargain bins when they're no longer hot, and they go on to the next thing. But that's knowing their particular customer base, and they do it really, really well, okay? Okay, I'm gonna stop there on how to establish a strategic focus. We're going to talk about the 4 strategies and the directions that you can take when coming up with a marketing analysis. We'll finish with customer goals, and that will prepare you and get you ready for the next test. So we're done for today. Go have a good one. It will be open on Friday, and I'll probably keep it open for like till Tuesday or Wednesday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.